All right, another totally rewarding chats. I'm here with my usual fellow Paul,
Hello, hello.
fine musician, and we have Alan Miegel, CEO of BetterComp. How's it going?
Good. Hi, guys. Happy Thursday.
Yeah, happy
Indeed.
Thursday. Of course, now we're going to get busted. Of all the stuff I told you about before, Alan, we pre-record stuff. So,
Just dub over, call it Tuesday if you want to.
yeah. Well,
Mars Day.
now I'll actually see if the people that do the work listen and launch it on a Thursday. So that'll be good. So then no one will know except I just ratted us out. So I have known you for a long time. Moment of silence for me and you, probably more you.
My hairline. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's changed. Some things have changed. But for those that don't, can you do two things? Can you give us your bio and background? Because I do think it's super cool where it lines up with Better. And then tell us a little bit about BetterComp.
Sure. Yeah. So my background's a lifelong comp geek. Started my career in compensation for Bank of America. I was the market pricing guy.
That
And then
guy.
I spent 7 years at Salary.com. Was on the Salary.com softball team. We did pretty well back in the day.
Yeah.
Then I spent 3 years at Workday, and then I was an executive at both PayFactors and PayScale before starting BetterComp in the fall of 2019. That's my background, lifelong comp geek. BetterComp's journey started in 2019. PayScale gave me a nice package to walk out the door and started BetterComp about 3 months later with the idea of really up-leveling the world of compensation. So we focus on that kind of large enterprise customer that has a lot of data in a lot of places. We help them by giving them tooling to be able to manipulate large amounts of data using the most modern tech platform in the industry. We're up to about just over 200 customers now. I raised our Series A back in July, about $33 million. So we are off to the races.
If you want to add any color around rising a Series A, because obviously you went from the friends, family, and fools round, right? That everyone goes through fundraising, everything, and have been super successful. So can you it doesn't happen all the time to every comp company. So can you give a little insight of how that went, or highlights or lowlights?
Yeah.
Other than your
So
hairline, I guess that probably changed, going through the process.
it was more my weight line, honestly. It was, I put on some poundage for a while there. So when we started BetterComp, part of what we looked at, we did look at raising some funds. We talked to VC. And this is back in 2021, where a lot of companies raised a lot of money with not a lot of revenue behind it. But part of what happens to you is if you raise too early, it really changes your journey. You become a VC funded company. The only way you can possibly exit is if you exit for over $1 billion. Otherwise, you kind of end up in like a slow, somewhat painful demise. We took the approach of we wanted to be able to control our own destiny for as long as we could. And so we did some friends and family. We did a couple different instruments, one of which is called convertible notes. The other one's a SAFE, which is simple agreement for future equity. But they're basically just ways that you can raise smaller rounds. So we got checks of friends and family of between 50 and up to 250 or 300K from a few investors. And we decided to do that for quite a long time. Most companies bootstrap for like a year, maybe 2 years. We bootstrapped for 5 years. It was a solid 5 years before we raised institutional funds. And at some point, the checks become bigger than, the guy that you play tennis with can write for. And you see a bigger opportunity in front of you. And early on, I did lose sleep over the idea of what if we raise funds and then we're not the owners of our own company. Later on, once I knew we were going to own the majority of the company, I frankly lost sleep over what if there's market opportunities out there and we're not in a position that we can go capture. So we chose to raise when we did with the idea that there's a lot of market opportunity in front of us. Some of our competitors are not doing as well as they would like. And we wanted to be able to take the opportunity if it presented itself. And so that was the timing for the raise and the reason to take funding. But even after the raise, we do control our own destiny. We still own the majority of the company. The founding team still owns north of 65% of the business, which is usually about double what Series A companies still own. And it should be the last round of funding that we ever raise. So it should be put us on a nice path.
No, that's super cool. I think it's great insight. I was lucky enough to do some M&A stuff through life, and watching people's journey and when they make that decision and the rationale behind it, I think is always cool insight, especially, I would say people in the world of, rewards. You only get so many chances to look at that because a lot of products are part of bigger suites and other stuff. So
Yeah.
I think that's really cool for kind of sharing that.
The only other thing I'd add, just because I want to see your live reaction to it to an extent, Alan, I think when you did it I think you undersold it a little bit. Raising money in early 2025 was not an easy time to raise money. And it suggests something about traction. And I'm not going to ask you to sort of talk about that because I don't think you disclose all those numbers, but it suggests something about momentum because investors have not been throwing rounds around like this. Like there are fewer of these things happening. So one's a sort of a congratulations, but I guess I imagine it was a little harder to do this in early 2025 compared to doing it 3 years ago or maybe waiting. I guess I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it's a unique time to raise money too.
Yeah, I think the timing is unique. I'd say we probably could have raised a pretty large round back in 2021, but kind of everyone could. I wouldn't say there's anything unique and differentiating about raising funds back then. Like I know companies that had under 500K in revenue that raised $20 million, and today that company wouldn't even be able to raise funds. So we feel good about the timing, feel good about the dollar amount, obviously, and then the investors are really high quality. But I think we have a good alignment that it's not like they're not asking us to take their funds and light the world on fire and then go raise another round. Like they're like, take care of customers, take care of employees, focus on innovation, and in the long run, you will win. But you have to
Yeah.
find the right balance there.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
Sean, you
great.
jumped right past the speed round, by the way. Like we got
Well,
into
no,
it
but
like
that was
fast
part
here.
of it, and I'm going to get him right now with a speed round, and then we'll talk about the world of comp management. So, really important questions here. This is why I have these because this is more my speed. Alan, coffee or tea?
Neither. I don't drink. My caffeine is like a Diet Coke. That's about as
Okay,
caffeinated as.
so okay, you get your caffeine fix. That's fine. You do get. I was about to ask, do you have caffeine? But you get your caffeine fix through Diet Coke.
Yeah, there's not much caffeine in these things, so it's more just having something. So yeah, I don't like the taste of either coffee or tea. I've probably had more coffee ice cream than I've had cups of coffee in my life. But it was actually one thing in Europe.
It's
I
wrong.
just got back from Europe last night, and I had to say, like, it looks really nice to sit in a cafe and have this little tiny cup of coffee and stuff. So, but I'll just eat the pastry that they have, not the coffee.
Favorite golf course you've played at?
I played some really great ones. Like I played Pinehurst and Pebble Beach. I think my favorite though is this little course in Tahoe called Coyote Moon. It is not a fancy. It's a nicer course, but it's not like really high end. But you just get this kind of Tahoe specific topography where you get like big drops and big carries, etc. But you get also like a giant boulder behind the green that you just the aesthetics of the course are just cool like that. That is definitely I'll call that my favorite course.
There you
Okay,
go.
that's I would not. I would have lost money on that somewhere.
Yeah.
You have a weekend away, which may be to rest, and I know you have kids, so now we're going to go with a weekend away that you can just escape.
Mm.
Would you want a posh weekend or a roughing it weekend out in the woods?
Posh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am not a camper. I like outdoors. Like I enjoy being outdoors, but then I want to go sleep in some place where I don't need a mosquito net.
Yeah. That's why golf at Tahoe is a good choice, right? You kind of get
Exactly.
that woodsy, outdoorsy, natural feel, and then you can go back and
I'm going to have to go back now. We're getting to the point we're going to have to go back and take stats on that one because that's one to ask all the time.
you are in the minority, Sean. Like accept your defeat.
I was on a roll there for a little bit. Friends plural. But yeah, we're back to the norm of posh. Favorite Red Sox player of all time?
Jim Rice, hands down.
Okay.
Very quick answer because I grew up watching him. He was my favorite player. Our seats were in left field. Our seats were about 5 rows away. He never threw a ball up, so it wasn't like he played favorites. He was my favorite player growing up. I will say that I'm a big fan of Roman Anthony now, the rookie, and mainly because I took my son down to a San Diego weekend and we did a Sox game while we were there, and we got front row seats in left field, and Roman Anthony threw a ball to my son specifically, like ran over. Of course, I started the recording, like, I was the dad that couldn't get the recording up fast enough, and I got him running away from us, not running towards us. So, but yeah, no, it's like he totally won my son over with just that small gesture. So,
Totally.
yeah.
Very cool. That's a cool story. And then are you a crunchy or creamy peanut butter person?
Oh, I don't discriminate between the two. I do like creamy, but the occasional I could do some crunch too.
So like what's in the pantry right now?
Creamy.
Creamy. All right. So like
Yeah.
I'm like, we're getting a lot of this, like, it depends consultant answer. It's like,
I've got a
no,
lot
there's
of people
one
running
jar.
for peanut butter office. Like running, that's
You're
that's
not
kinda
going to offend the peanut.
No,
yeah,
Like,
I
it's
wanna
okay.
offend the peanutally challenged or something. I
I
don't
think we have
know.
like a Jif in there right now. It's creamy, but sometimes you get it like freshly ground and it's got some little chunk in there. That's okay too. I am
Okay.
definitely like a orange juice with pulp kind of guy though. Like the more pulp, the better. And if it's pure filtered out, it doesn't feel like it's real orange juice to me.
So then you should be a crunchy peanut. Like, that's sort of take the food and eat it more naturally.
I know as we go to the stuff here, I did not see that segue coming from peanut butter to orange juice.
I get the
I
that's
get it.
the
I just didn't see it. I didn't see it coming. So I'll let you
Yeah.
kick off, Paul, wherever you want to start, because I
Yeah.
know you've done a bunch of stuff around comp management, like probably more than you want to recall.
A lot. Well, I mean, so I guess where I'd love to start, Alan, I mean, you've been in comp a long time, and where you've been in comp before at other companies, it's not like they just do one thing within comp. So the world was your oyster as you were thinking about BetterComp, and I'm curious, like, what led you to this space that you've chosen to focus on? Like, what is it about that big, lots of data, upmarket customer, and specifically the problems that you've chosen to solve for them? Because they have lots of problems too. So I guess I'd love to hear more about why you focused on that particular niche within the category.
Sure. Well, it's probably easier to think about where I decided not to start. One of the places I think is really hard to solve well, I mean, you can't solve it, it's just hard to solve well, is the comp planning space, because there tend to be very needy end customers that are managers, right? And they really want what they want, which is a spreadsheet, basically. And you have these customers that usually buy a solution as they're transitioning from like one state of being to another. So they go from being a small company to a big company. And maybe they have your solution for 3 or 4 or 5 years, but then they upgrade to Workday or something. So I knew I didn't want to do that. And then I did have one other idea before I started BetterComp, and I pitched this idea, and I'll just describe it as kind of like the single data solution. You just get a single data point. It has all these different data sets in it, and you just get a set of numbers. It's a little bit more elaborate than that. And then when I ran that by a few folks, everyone's like, "That's a really bad idea." Nobody wanted to buy that one at all. So again, I had some time between when I left PayScale and what I wanted to do, and so I read the Lean Startup, which is a great book for founders just to kind of, get how do you do a startup and do it in the lean way of doing it. And one of the things they said in there is just go talk to customers. And so I went and talked to 30 customers, and I actually didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just said, I'm thinking about doing something in market pricing. Tell me about like what you have and what you like and what you don't. And this was probably the most liberating experience because I had nothing to sell them. Like I didn't have a mock-up. I had some ideas, but I made sure not to get those out there. And I just listened for what they wanted. And they wanted things like, I have a lot of data and I just want to make it consistent across my different data sets. I know how I want to get the work done. It's in my head, but I can't make the software do it. And I don't want to do it through a data load. Like I want the software to just do what I want. So there were a lot of problems out there, and frankly, and this wasn't specific to any one vendor. I talked to, I think it was at least 5 customers from every vendor that was out there at the time, and they all had kind of similar challenges. A lot of them had used multiple solutions so they could compare and contrast, but they still had problems with them. And a lot of what they wanted were just like the old set of tooling wasn't designed for how they wanted to get the work done. And you could do it through a data load, you could do it through data manipulation, but you couldn't really make the tool do it itself. So I think I covered all the questions.
Yeah.
You. So
No, that's great. So then, like my team calls it market management. You've used the phrase market pricing. Let's let that be synonymous to an extent. Where do you draw the boundaries on that? Like, do you see this as like the problem? Do you see it as this is step one? I mean, you don't need to give away anything sensitive, but like, do you see that problem as living within the space? Do you see it having tentacles and growing, just given the nature of data and needs today?
yeah, so I think generally the simplest way to describe like why the solutions exist is kind of the way I have a friend that's a CFO, and I told him what I was thinking about doing, and he had a few drinks at this point. It's like a
All the ideas are good now.
I think it was a Christmas party or something in the winter that year, and he said, I don't care at all about market data in the whole process around it. I just want a number, and I just want to know what the number is. And so it kind of like, it was a nice, aside from the colorful language he used at the time, it became kind of this idea of like, what you're trying to get to is that answer. You want to know, what is my job and what should I pay it? Everything else is just noise, right? So if I have to like take different surveys and weight them, or if I have to, go buy the right data set and read the job description, like all of it's kind of noise. You really, in the end of the day, just want to get down to what is my job and what should I pay? And everything else in the way of that is just friction. So I think in general, there'll probably be other growth opportunities for BetterComp, because right now we focus on kind of the upper end of the market, and it's about customers that have a lot of data from a lot of places. Frankly, we started there because we looked at the other competitors in the space and said, if we nail that, they can't get there easily, right? If we did like the bottom end of the market first, the data, I want some data, like there's lots of data tools. You can kind of get discounts and whatnot to really drive the
Right.
price really low. It's not that differentiating. We wanted to go to the hardest, most complex area first, because once we did that, we could go to other areas too.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have to confirm or deny, but I'm on record where a use of funds we expect is to sort of come down market a bit, because there's a lot of people with problems and lots of data, just not quite as much as some of these crazy global upmarket customers. But yeah,
I think to be fair too, that was smart on because the complexity problem is real, right? There's a point at which small and mid-size, like they've got to get off of $0 and the budget's small and like they have to buy your product. And it's a legit question. Can you do this well enough in Excel?
Right.
The world's number one software provider, right? Like, so fine. The scale of some of the companies that you're working with, that's not really possible to do well. And to your point, I really like use just because I'm not as educated as you guys, the Cheshire Cat reference a lot. If you don't know where you're going, all roads will lead you there. And I really like, Alan, the premise of like all they really want, like where I'm going is getting you a number. The rest of it's just crap along the way. But so I really like that. And that complexity piece, though, I think is why it was smart to start there, because that and the budget is high. Like, hey, we can do cool things and pull that money from this pool to pay for your stuff a different way. And then, it's always easier to pull features, right? Once you've had them all, like pulling
Yeah.
them out for people's way easier than, building them.
Yeah, I'd say that if you start at if you want to go up, you can probably start at the bottom of the market and work your way up. I think the harder part has been when vendors like, they come up with an idea for mid-market or, SMB or what have you, and it's a data tool, right? And then they're like, I'll just add some Radford and Mercer and W2W data. It's like, okay, now you're going from a data tool to data set management, and they're very different things. And then somewhere in the middle is like the two come together and you want to be able to, I want to bring some of my own data because I have my own industry specific data sources and I want some data fed to me at the same time to fill in the blanks. I think, one of our unique super strengths, frankly, is that we've been around the block for a while. We've seen this space. We've seen what companies that do well do and what companies that don't do well do. We'll try not to make their mistakes. We'll make our own mistakes along the way.
don't repeat the sins of the others. You'll come up with your own new sins. I love it. The next question is not about what makes for a great customer for you. It's more about once somebody's decided to be a customer, what do you hope is true about them? And I ask it from the frame of, for all of those people out there listening, that like, what do I need to get my house in order on my path to automation, right? Because I'm taking as a starting point, the tech doesn't solve everything. So like, what are the problems that you think they need to solve non-tech wise so they are really ready to get the most out of technology?
I think the best customer for us are the ones that, let me say, the customer that's harder to work with is the customer that says, here's what I do, and this is the way I do it. And we say, well, why do you do it that way? I don't know. I just do it that way. It's like,
because.
Right. And again, it's like, sometimes I get it. There's sometimes like your CFO wants it a certain way. You need it a certain way. But oftentimes, like if you have a way of doing it and you're just doing it because you've done it for 5 years, you never thought about, should I be doing this? Like think about like very specific weighting methodologies. It's like, does it really matter if you weight something 2-2-1 versus 50-50-25 or 20-50-20-20-25? Not really, right? So in general, like I think customers that show up and they understand data and structure and they want to get to something more scalable. It's the customer that kind of shows up and says, especially the folks that are like the VP and the directors understand like that they have to evolve and they have to adapt, right? But they may have like a customer that they've done something a certain way and they've had a certain tool that functions. I do things A, B, E exactly in that order. And it's like, well, you could do A and B and never have to touch them again and then do C, D, the other 3 letters, whatever I didn't name, and just get through the work a whole lot more efficiently. It's kind of like what was that? I think it's a Something About Mary quote where the guy's just like he needs like his 6-second abs and nobody doesn't want the 5-second abs. And like, those are the customers where it's like, okay, we'll work with you, but it's, you could be doing the twice as fast if you just thought about it a little bit.
To build on that, are there certain things, I guess, same question, different way, certain things that must be true for them to be able to work with you to buy the software? In other words, like you have to have this stuff or have a job art, like, I don't know. Are there things that must be true or you make them go back and do some homework before they kind of, get the software rolling?
Yeah. So we are a data set management tool. If you don't have any data sets, we got nothing for you right now. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to have some surveys. And we'll help you find some surveys. So you have none, you're getting your first data sets going. We'll help you find the right data set. We'll refer you to some good top tier vendors that have good data sets. And sometimes what happens is we say, you don't need a solution like us until you have like 2 or 3. But if you just want one, here's one, you should just go buy it and use it. And you don't need us right now. And that's fine because the customer ends up in a better place. They remember us. We've had some customers who, we don't sell them anything and they send us, a referral to somebody else that they're like, well, I used to work at this huge Fortune 500, they need something better than what they have right now. And so again, the customer got some better data, and we got a referral into somebody that can use what we do today.
Yeah. So the first mutual customer I think that we had no job architecture, no like job codes were just random numbers to some extent. So like there's no must-haves to the way you framed it, Sean. But I do think, not to stump for a particular software, but like you get more out of it if there's some frameworks and principles that you can use to sort of report and manage some of the secret sauce of BetterComp better, right? Like if your data knows that job A and job B are very similar in some way, then the software is going to do a better job at helping you manage the connections between those jobs better, or find appropriate matches, or scale them as you move into new markets, right? So it's not a requirement, but there are definitely some artifacts or some concepts that make it helpful, right? Is that a fair sort of
Yeah,
capture of?
I'd say we tend to play better with customers that have a lot of data and also have some organizational structure to them. Like we do have some customers, they show up and they're like, we have no job architecture. We just have a series of random jobs, and I barely know the codes that I have. Like, okay, well, we can help you, but a lot of our differentiators really come from like, you've got job families, you've got job levels, you know how your levels compare to that of surveys. Like you've seen this rodeo before, right? You know what you're doing. Again, it's always interesting when you have these sometimes you get big customers who act like small customers, right? They don't have a
Totally.
job architecture. They don't have consistent market matches. They sometimes cherry pick data from surveys rather than find the best match. I think we all have customers like that, but it's interesting when they're really big and they have like 20, 30, 40,000 employees.
Yeah, I actually find sometimes it's more. Because a
Right.
lot of those orgs have grown through acquisition. And as a result, they've got like 3 different versions of job codes sort of dangling out there. Or maybe they managed by region once and then they decided to manage by business unit. And as a result, like you just get these Frankenstein structures that
Well, that's the interesting part, I think, of this is like company size. You have to measure by something. I think that's when people talk about it all the time, but it's really company complexity, right? You got big companies who act like little companies and little companies who have 600 people and 400 jobs legit. And you're like, okay. And they've got a bunch of data. You're like, okay, that's fine. And so that's always the interesting thing to me is you have to kind of put them in buckets. And I've always in my head, like your company, like you guys handle like it's complexity. Like I got a bazillion people in a bunch of different places with a bunch of different jobs, potentially countries. That's like I gotta wrangle all this up. Highly technical term. So
Yeah, the way we describe it is like you bring a bunch of complexity to us. We help add structure to your complexity so you can manage it more efficiently, right? Oftentimes, like I think a lot of people show up and they've had to do so much to, massage the other systems to work the way that they want to, and they've developed their own framework for methodology. Like they have their written framework and their written thought processes, and we take those written things that they have to, the cheat sheet thing where if you know what cuts you want to use every time, why don't you go to your cheat sheet kind of stuff? So it makes it a lot more efficient. We call them policies, but they're ways to get work done that are a methodology of doing the work.
yeah, yeah. What do you find is the primary friction point? Like you kind of answered this. Maybe I want to answer differently, but like we talked about what's sort of helpful, right? What's your dream? You did describe a little bit like somebody who's coming with a very specific, it must be done this way. But are there other like common, like just hurdles, like things that have to be overcome when somebody's thinking about moving away from spreadsheets, moving away from manual processes to automation? And maybe one of it is just acceptance that it's not going to be the same, but maybe give me the next 2 on the list. Like what are the other friction points that your customers have to overcome when they're on this path towards automation?
Yeah, I think I don't know if you have to overcome it so much as deal with it. Sometimes you just have messy data, right? You
No.
have data,
say it isn't so.
Sometimes?
you've got imperfect job, like you say you've got job families, but you don't have any subfamilies. So you have everything in finance, like, right? Or you had a customer today, it says, we're going to have data from 2 HRISs and some of the employee IDs are the same. How do you deal with that? I'm like, I don't. You deal with that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. It sounds like a you thing, not a me
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
So I think in general, like, I think comp systems often find themselves as kind of the slave system to like a Workday or a PeopleSoft or what have
Mm.
you. And like, if your system of record has messy data, like messy is different than I want to add more structure to it. Like that's okay. But if you have really messy data and you've never cleaned it up, like buying another software system's not going to fix it for you.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Even like your job family, subfamily, like a lot of times the data exists for a different purpose than comp management.
Totally.
And do you need to replace it? Do you need to supplement it? I have a customer now that's, they're job family is really their org structure. Like it's not a good way to implement. They're a Workday shop, not a good way to implement Workday, but it was done. And you got to figure out, well, now where does the real job family live? Where can I put that? And you could put it directly in the comp management system, but is that the right answer? And so, yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, how does your data architecture sort of line up with what can be done in the comp tool? Is the comp system going to be the system of record, or are you going to try to clean it up somewhere? Data, always the problem. Yeah. Go ahead, Sean. I could see a question coming.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm always curious, assuming everything gets done really, really well in BetterComp, right? How have you seen that work downhill to help organizations with the rest of their process? So, I think the one thing that seems to be true, kind of talking about garbage in, garbage out, is it's just foundationally, as you start with better data, better tool you're at. Have you seen that cascade down the process so that once they've got a better handle, around where you're working, it's helped the processes later?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can. I think the other thing is, we have to be mindful that not everyone's going to have perfect data, right? And we need to get better at working with, I wouldn't call it unstructured data, but less structured data, right? Where you have someone who has a little bit of a mess, and how do you, like, not a lot of 600-person companies that have perfect job architectures because they haven't had to, right? So we need to be better at like coming up with tools and products that also are not designed for customers that have job families and job levels and bunch of surveys. And so to Paul's use of funds, we will get better at that kind of less complex organization, right? That has, I need more, like, my comp processes that got put in place, but they're still evolving, right? That customer's going to want different tooling and different products, and they're not going to have the same problems that our existing customers have, but a lot of them are the same too, right? So things like both that customer that is, we call it job by job market pricing. Like I don't have a family structure. I don't know anything about what a job level is. I just have random jobs. That's like very different than I have job families and job levels and I do global market pricing, right? But both of those customers want a super easy interface that's easy to find. They both want, reporting that's light and easy to use.
Yeah.
But there's common threads. Like, I think the trick on the product side is to say, like, let's bury the features behind the UI if you don't need them. Like, you don't have to have it front and center if it's something that's only used for big, complex organizations, right? So we just hired a new VP of product. He's 2 weeks in, so he's like totally, he figured out like on day 2 what a composite was, and then day 3 is like what a survey was. Like, he's still kind of coming along, but he brings a perspective of having worked in the HR space, and there are companies out there that have already mastered the idea that like not everyone needs every feature, and how do you segment out what you offer to folks in a way that lets you tailor the use case and tailor so each customer then feels like they've got an experience designed for them, but it's one set of code, it's one set of features, right? Just things are turned on and off by module.
Yeah. So comp is not a static world. I want you to identify at least 2 things that are going to be the big changes in the next few years. And one of them cannot use a certain 2-letter sort of buzzword that everybody uses, right? So give me one story that isn't part of the hype, and then I'll let the second one be sort of part of the hype.
I didn't know FX rates were such a big deal, Paul. I didn't know. Wow. I did not know that.
That's your big change, Sean, we should probably talk about, because that's not a lot changing there.
Yeah. So I do think that generally data will become easier to work with. Think of it like there's friction involved with the world of market pricing today through several different means. Some of them are 2-letter acronyms, some are not. It will be easier to work with the data, right? You'll have less friction. Now, it doesn't mean there's no work. It doesn't mean the work's going away. But it will, like, market pricing your entire organization, the amount of time involved, the amount of effort involved will go down.
Yep.
Can I talk about the 2-letter acronym?
Now you go there. Somebody has to do it. So
AI, right? So I had this conversation with one of our partners today that talked about how AI is also is going to both fall flat on its face and also be revolutionary at the same time. So I think that the use of AI, if it provides value, will drive a lot of efficiencies, value, better decisions in organizations. But there will also be a bunch of AI that's created that doesn't offer very much value, and it will feel like the AI didn't really get there. I looked at a new tool. I'd never seen it before today. It showed up on LinkedIn for me. It was in the comp space. talked about AI in the world of comp planning. And to me, I was like, that's the whole idea is AI in the world of comp planning. And the price points were incredibly expensive, I thought, to justify the AI piece of it. I'm like, what are you going to optimize someone's merit budget when they got a 3% merit budget? Sure, you can make slightly better decisions, but are you going to justify a $500,000 a year price point for your solution? Probably not.
And the rationale why they only have 3% to begin with is not they have too much money, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It was going to be 2.5%, and we felt generous. So, I think in general, like in the future, there will be less manual work involved, partly through AI, partly through just people figuring out how to make data flow more seamlessly. Can I add in one thing that I don't think is going to happen?
Yeah, do it.
So, there's been lots of forecasts about how, like, eventually in the future, you have a single data source. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think you're going to always have multiple data sources from multiple providers because of the network effects associated with Radford or a Mercer or a WTW. You're just not going to find a single data set that's going to rule them all. You're always going to live in a world where there's multiple data sources. Some of them are surveys. Some of them are maybe real-time data solutions. Maybe you get something like a Compa because you like the offers data coming in. But I don't think there's a world where, one data set takes over everything. You'll at least have, like today, there's over 50 different survey vendors. 10 years from now, are there 50? Maybe. There might be more. What if AI can help you create a survey from scratch more quickly and the costs are lower? And now I can create a survey that only makes me $100,000 a year, but I only spend $10,000 a year to run it.
Yeah. I mean, the trick with data, right? It's nothing is ever, in theory, if every company in the world was in one place, then you'd only need one data source. So you could sample the whole market in one spot. That's never going to be true, right? So it's how much data of what variety gives you the adequate sample so that you have confidence that it represents the underlying market. And now I'm going to add a vector to that, which is, and helps you understand how the market might be changing for people looking for jobs today, right? Because that's, if you think about one of the challenges with surveys in the past, not to go on that soapbox, but the data is just old by the time you get it. And it doesn't give you that second, that first derivative, right? How fast is it changing sort of concept? And that's where a lot of the new data sources have been focused, is on speed and time. So you need both sample breadth to represent like my competitive market and something that helps you know if it's changing. And that's just hard to do in one provider when you need sort of hyper local in some circumstances, industry in other circumstances. So I think you're probably right there.
I agree, Alan. I think 50 short. I think globally there's got to be thousands of survey providers already. I think people can get into the market. So I think the unique position that you're in, with people providing comp management, the problem to tackle is kind of what you said. There's not that there's 50 survey providers, if that's the number we wanted to say. I think there'll still be 50, to your point, maybe 100, but another 100 other alternative data sources. And now how do you blend them, put them in, decide which jobs I want to use external data with, not like the complexity now is kind of exponential on this because of the amount of data, even just migrating data, right? So you use the same, data sources over years. You're like, the number moves a little, whatever. Like, how do you flatten that curve? How do you deal with those ranges move? How do you deal with stuff moving with other data sources? And by the way, the budgets for comp teams, they don't usually get a ton of money. So they're going to have to move. Well, so what ends up happening is they can't have the same 3 surveys. Like I would say, you can't have the same 3 surveys if that's a number, and add a data source and kind of see the pro. You have to throw one out to be able to afford the other stuff. And so how do you deal with that math? And that's why I think like the complexity involved where you're at, where people say AI is going to make it, simpler, is also going to make it harder. And I'll date myself and kind of reiterate one of the points you made. When the internet came out, and I'm that old, and the businesses were really kind of firing up on that side, there were a lot of people doing interwebs things that didn't make money, right? They were kind of cool, flashy, whatever. And the world sorts itself out. And the world sorted itself out based on like, were you providing a thing that had value? And people would pay for? Like, you don't have to overbake it. So I agree with you, Alan. There's like pay a reasonable fee for it, right? So the commercial model works itself out. So I agree with you. We're in this place where it's going to be great, and we're just going to see, has that company been around? You got, like you guys have seen, like whatever you said, we've seen shit. Right? Like those companies understand and can use it as a tool as part of it because they've been around and understand it. But I think it is going to be a really cool time to watch the 2-letter word. As things go.
That's my phrase, right? Is it going to be a tool or is it going to be a toy? And people are willing to pay for tools, but companies don't.
I'll throw out there, I think it'd be interesting, Alan, you're perspective, like we're not seeing the pay side of it yet. In other words, the AI costs money, and that hasn't been thrown in really yet into the market. And to your point, I think that just reiterates, are you solving a problem that is worth spending? Because
Yeah.
that cost is going to get half to eaten by you. It's eventually going to go to somebody. And so I think that that's coming, I think, as well. And so again, if you're just flashy trying to do something and nobody, you don't have a revenue model,
Yeah.
you obviously can't pay for it.
Yeah.
I think, the pay for it is interesting too, because I think what a lot of vendors have done is they've talked about, any kind of AI is AI, right? And so to Paul's point about it being a toy, there's a lot of AI out there that's really just automating, like it automates a search process. It makes the search a little faster. Like, well, how much is that worth? Like, it's okay. I like it. Like, I'd rather have it than not. But do I want to pay an extra, whatever, 10 grand a year for it? Probably not. But something that helps you make better decisions, and I can retain my employees better, and I can, hire better or make smarter offers. Like, sure, there's value in that because I can tie that directly back to, like, if a tool out there
Yeah.
can improve my offer acceptance rate by 10% and I can fill my roles 10% faster, yeah, I'm going to drive value in the organization because I'm getting people into butts into seats faster and they're productive.
Yeah. So we're gonna quickly come up against sort of an end of timeline here. So Alan, our closing question typically is like, pick a problem that you could magically solve. No constraints, no budget needed. Like, what's the big HR problem or comp problem that you would automatically choose to solve?
Like, you had to put in HR because I had another one, which is
You be you, man. If you want to go bigger, that's
I
fine.
mean, if it's solving the Red Sox rotation or something, you can put
uh,
it aside. But no, you do you on this if it's in the company pace.
That's right.
so I think, like, in the broader world, honestly, I think the energy problem is the biggest, most challenging one. That, like, energy is hard to produce, and to spin up a new factory, right, a new energy plant is not an easy thing to do, right? Especially with the world of AI eating the world's energy. You get, I forget how many gigabytes the U.S. has. I think it's like 1 going to 2. China is like 2 going to 8 in the same amount of time, right? And if we don't have enough energy, your AI can't run effectively in the future. So I think, honestly, energy is going to be the hardest one to solve, especially with the politicized environment that we live in. You need a big new deal kind of thing to go find new sources of energy. For talking, like, you know tons of tons of energy sitting out there. You're not going to solve it with solar panels on your roof.
Yeah. I figure we're all going to attach extension cords to the top of a clock tower. And when the lightning strikes, we're just going to harness it in a device that we all dream up when we fall off the toilet late one night. Like, that's what I imagine is the solution at some point in the future.
So funny enough,
Alan just became, probably when this airs, my youngest works for one of the largest community solar company. She's huge into the solar energy and berates me consistently for AI and the energy consumption, et cetera. So you probably it really moved up to the top of somebody's list on that, because she's not wrong. Like, I've learned a ton from that. And that's where my point is, like, because it's so expensive, the way that you deal with it, it's not an unlimited cap. So obviously it's just supply and demand. And so you start to be like, we can't supply anymore. There's demand. So we're just going to move price up to
right?
reduce demand. And that's where I think the functionality. So it's interesting. I think it all ties together that way of, like, if you don't solve that, the cost of the AI is going to be there. And that's where companies will be like, you know what, Sean, you can just go do search on your own. Like, do that yourself, not using AI.
Yeah.
We're spending on this thing over here that puts 10%, reduces time to fill by 10% because there's legit money there.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a cool answer.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It's always good to get another, Red Sox fan on. That's always a bonus. We should have had Red Sox gear on. I should have gotten out in front of this and got some Red Sox gear on.
I just appreciate that Paul's got the good, better, best comp in the background. So.
Yeah.
You know,
For those listening, the Spotify, Apple, whatever, Paul has a whiteboard in the back, so you can always go on YouTube and see it. But then, unfortunately, you have to look at Paul and I at the same time. On his whiteboard, he wrote good comp, better comp, best comp, and crossed off better and good. So
no, best and good.
best and
Better's
good.
not crossed
Sorry.
off.
That is
Yeah.
We landed on BetterComp, right?
Yeah.
Clearly that was the
Landed
right
on better
answer.
comp.
I'm gonna start a company and call it Even Better Comp, just to get after you, Alan.
Now, honestly, the genesis of the name was about the idea of always getting better and furthering yourself, not getting to the best. It is a be, not a destination. So
I see what you did
So
there.
Paul's right now going online and getting even better comp. So your whole
Yeah.
premise going to be even
Faster BetterComp. Like I'll just keep putting those adverbs in front of it.
long URL. Hey man, thanks. I really appreciate you taking the time out with everything
Yeah.
going on. I really appreciate you taking the time out. Always great to catch up. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks,
I
Alan.
appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.